sticking with WWE and Peacock, have you heard the fantastic news that if you're in the United States, during the changeover from the WWE Network to the Peacock app, which is currently taking place, Peacock have taken it upon themselves to make an administrative decision to remove content from the WWE Network that they believe to be either racist or flagrantly offensive. They've even put in very simple little things, like, for instance, you remember when the Muppets hosted WWE Raw? They actually put in a disclaimer for that, saying that Peacock does not necessarily correlate with the values of certain characters that appear on this program, because apparently the Muppets are offensive. I have no idea how or why.
They're so wholesome.
Apparently, people are offended by the demographic of the two old men. I personally think it's very funny, and anyone I know who's old thinks it's really funny because it's a good representation of them. Apparently, that might be considered offensive to people of a certain age. Fuck off. Pathetic is what it is. Basically, Peacock is taking it upon itself to try and erase certain parts of WWE history, including some pretty notable ones. For instance, WrestleMania with the infamous Bad News Brown and Roddy Piper match. That's been removed from Peacock's WWE.
Oh, is that the one where Piper's kind of a little blackface? Yeah. I mean,
some people call me the Hot Scot.
On the one hand, I do understand it, just because the way the world is right now. I've got no problem with, trying to show equality for everyone and all that. But at the same time, it's a classic old adage, right? Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. You can't ignore the things that happened, because then you'll forget they happened and no one will learn from it and, not do it again. Like, I'm sure they want to try and censor Mania 20, the triple threat main event. I could imagine them trying to get rid of that.
I bet in one way or another. I bet every Chris Benoit match is on there. If you're gonna genuinely, this is the problem with stuff like this, right? If you're gonna do it, I understand why you can do it, because Peacock paid $1 billion for this content, so technically it's their right to do it. However, have some gumption, have some fucking guts, and back it up by removing literally everything that offends you, and then don't fucking cry when pretty much everybody who subscribes to the WWE Network chooses to fucking give you a lot of aggro over it, because ultimately that's what you're going to get. Fine. Then remove Chris Benoit. Remove anything that's racially insensitive. How about Triple H versus Booker T at WrestleMania 19 and all the inflammatory comments that Triple H made saying, guys
people like you.
People like you. Yeah, I wonder who. Obviously, he was referring to his status and class. Nothing to do with color. You obviously understand. You have to excuse me. I am highly distracted by Sasha Banks on my TV screen right now. Hot damn! You might want to remove that content because that is rated R. But ultimately, I think it's obnoxious. I think it's ignorant. I am not a liberal. I am not right wing in any way. I don't conform to any of your fucking stupid labels. At the same time, I am infuriated by this concept of let's tear down any statues that may represent anything like slave labor and stuff like that. Why? Why are we doing that? Why are we just ignoring history? Do you know how you educate people to be better? By showing them the mistakes that were made prior. If you remove those mistakes, like you say, you are doomed to repeat. It is an absolute abject admittance of failure in our society to educate people if we choose to remove anything from history which offends us. Oh, by the way, if that's the case, does that work the other way? Does that mean we have to tear down that whopping great Lincoln statue in Washington, the Lincoln Memorial, which apparently, because he was all for the removal of slave labor, do we want to pretend that slave labor doesn't exist? Because if that's the case, remove that fucking statue then. I want it out. Off you go. Slave labor doesn't exist anymore. La 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 la. That's what the uber left does. The uber right are just a bunch of outright arrogant, ignorant racists, and the uber left are just basically extremists who believe that they can use the same smear tactics for good as opposed to evil. And ultimately, they cancel each other out by being a bunch of fucking cretinous dickheads. People need to grow up. I'm so sick of this revisionist history. History doesn't go away just because you choose to cover your ears and go la 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 every time someone tries to educate you. It's pathetic.
That's not how it works. I know Disney Plus has done this. Disney Plus will put in a disclaimer before a film going, this might show improper views or
Or they could
things
just
like
fire
that.
you if you don't want to fucking put out a statement that they pressure you to do so, which, by the way, is an incredibly fascist maneuver in its own right. Hey, you
True.
over there, woman who's in part of our Mandalorian TV series, we need you to do this, this, and this. I don't want to. It's my own personal social media. Already, you're fired. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Her
not
viewpoints
the best
aren't
choice.
fantastic, but by firing her, we're setting a horrific precedent.
Yeah, I mean, when you remove her, it kind of makes her not necessarily like a pariah, but kind of a martyr in some way. Like people are just gonna flock to it.
Yeah, of course, people are going to. If anything, all you're doing is adding more credibility and strength. You could have shown. So, all I fucking hear from leftists and liberals is this concept and this notion of forgiving, that we are better, that we shall provide a better world and a better amount of unity for people to live in. But what you do is you use the same vitriol, hate, and smear tactics that the right use to remove anyone from the right who says anything you disagree with. And ultimately, if you actually go back and look at it, the majority of what she said was actually not that flagrant. Some of the things, obviously, were a bit disrespectful. You can't obviously compare hating someone for their political beliefs to, hunting down and mercilessly, killing a religious demographic. That's ridiculous. But at the same time, I don't think that warrants. How do we educate her? By firing her. Okay, how is she educated by that? Oh, I won't make that mistake again. I'll just be silent. No. If you had said, we are going to keep you on board, but we want you to take, what happened to things like sensitivity training? What happened to education? What happened to sitting down with people and showing them the error of their ways? Now, fuck that. We'll just fire you. Great. Congratulations. Now what you've done is you've made an icon out of her. And that's exactly the same principle here. Did what Roddy Piper do at WrestleMania, was that acceptable? At the time, even then, it was a little bit like, oh, careful, mate. What about the coconut business as well? When he smashed the coconut over Jimmy Snuka. He did a lot of things that, do you know why he did them? Because he was a fucking heel. And this comes into this fucking bracket again. Fans who think they have a right to tell people how to get their heel heat. If you're one of these fans who wants to go on social media and say, I'm offended by what you did as a heel, fuck off. Get off social media, go outside, get a tan, go and walk your fucking dog. Please do something relatively productive with your life, because you are a pathetic, sweaty melt. It's what you are. There's a reason they use the term snowflake, and that's for people like you. You can't have it both ways. You cannot say he's a heel, he should be a bad guy, blah, blah, blah. And ultimately, maybe that's why AEW doesn't believe in proper heels and faces, because they're scared of offending somebody with their silly little liberal show. I'm not impressed by that, and I'm not interested in that. I don't care if a heel does something that offends me, because ultimately that's what he's supposed to do. Where are all these people up in arms when MJF called Adam Pacitti a paedophile? Where was that? That was all right because it's MJF and it's AEW, but I bet if a WWE star had called him a pedo, people would have fucking torn down the headquarters in New York over those shenanigans. Oh my God, they would have set fire to Connecticut, mate. Unacceptable. Oh, an AEW star did. That's different, isn't it? You see? Fuck off. The hilarious double standards of wrestling fans. Grow up. It's pathetic.
Oh yeah, like like going back to the sensitivity training you mentioned. Sammy said some very inflammatory things he did, and they're like,
but yeah, 3 weeks of sensitivity training, so it's all right apparently. Which we
have completely
no proof
cured
that he took. We have no proof.
Yeah, really. They're just like, nah, he went, guys. Here, have some stuff we know you want.
Yeah.
It's fine. Fuck off.
Fuck off. Cretins. Yeah, it's a bullshit maneuver. I don't like it. I think it sets a horrible precedent. But hey, that's WWE for you. If you're gonna make $1 billion off of it, I guess they don't really give a shit. So it is what it is. Any other thoughts on it, mate?
No, I mean, it doesn't really affect us. It's honestly just the States, from what I can tell.
You can still find it all on YouTube. The internet.
Yeah.
The great thing about the internet is it may be full of fucking trolls and snowflakes who want everything to change just because they're offended. But ultimately, you can always find the content you want. And ultimately, you can always find the fucking truth if you're willing to look for it hard enough. Nothing ever happens by accident.